Aisling accepted the hand of the tuxedoed man and rose carefully from the limousine's rear door. He turned and offered her his arm, and she looped hers through it and matched his pace. Ahead was the Galleria Borghese, typically filled with throngs of locals and tourists, but tonight reserved for a private event. It featured twin staircases leading up to a patio and door, with 5 enormous, gorgeous windows on the front facade. She wore a black evening gown that clung tightly enough that no one would suspect her of carrying weapons. Unfortunately, they'd be correct. Aside from the couple of elements of her fake makeup kit she'd been able to fit in the tiny clutch purse that rested in her left hand, she had no weapons or gadgets. Her magical rings and bracelets were present, but the anti-magic field that encompassed the museum rendered them useful only as decoration. Aisling maintained a neutral smile as she focused on keeping her steps steady so she wouldn't stumble in her pumps. Walking in heels was not a thing she had much practice with. In preparation for the mission, Arthur Ellis had made her walk across the wardrobe room repeatedly, shaking his head the whole time. He'd announced, with a sniff of professional disapproval, "You need etiquette classes." Aisling had laughed. "Yeah, I'll get right on that." Now she wished there'd been time. She'd managed some makeup and had carefully styled her normally unruly hair in something approaching fashionable. She entered the enormous lobby, separated from her chaperone, and headed for the bar. Women in gowns only slightly less fancy than hers stood behind it. She smiled and requested, "Vodka martini, extra olives." It was the consummate sipping drink, and she intended to make it last through the entire evening. She accepted it from them, dropped a bill on the bar, and leaned against it as she looked out over the gathering. The women mostly wore outfits similar to hers, but the men had a wider range of attire. Most were in tuxedos, a couple in suits, and a handful in uniforms. The Italian government hosted this event and had invited members of all the embassies. Her false identity positioned her as a low-level member of the American contingent. She was skilled at many accents and had created her American vernacular by watching movies from that country during her childhood. While helping her sister Kate in Boston, she also picked up a few more words and pronunciations to help her disguise. Her current accent was largely Midwest, with a hint of Northeast. A man approached the bar beside her and ordered a drink. He faced her and spoke with an English inflection. "Quite the event, isn't it?" She nodded. "It is, Ambassador Stanford." He smiled. "You have the advantage of me.